I'm going to show you how to get started with the PyCharm Python integrated development environment. And the first thing you're going to want to do is go to jetbrains.com, and then in products, go ahead and find PyCharm, and then download and install the version for your operating system. And while you're doing that, you can go ahead and just accept all the defaults there. It will take just a few minutes. Now, you can use PyCharm as a traditional IDE where it enhances your productivity, or you can use it like Cursor or Anti-Gravity where you have an integrated agent to help you get things done. All right, I'm just going to show you how to use it as the traditional IDE. There's a bit of a learning curve here, and so it's maybe useful to show you some of the important concepts inside that product. So when you first fire up PyCharm, it should look something like this, and you'll maybe notice up here in the upper right a pill that says not unlock pro maybe, but it might say start trial or something like that. And if you click start trial, you're going to start a 30-day trial with PyCharm Professional, which is a subscription product. And then when those 30 days run out, you'll probably be prompted to pay for Professional. If you don't pay for Professional, you sort of revert to the Community Edition, and that should be just fine unless you're an extreme developer and need some of those extra tools in Professional. For the most part, I don't think you'll notice any difference between Community and Professional. All right, you can see that I'm going to show you how to do this in the Community Edition. All right, so when you get in here, a lot of stuff going on. Probably the simplest thing to do here would be to start either a new script or a new notebook. You can get something similar over here, and I'm going to go ahead and click New Script. All right, so you're just presented with a boilerplate Python script, and it doesn't really do anything except for if I run this, it's going to print Hi PyCharm in the terminal window here. Okay, but what I want you to notice is if you expand that miscellaneous project, all right, you have this folder in there, .venv, and then there's the script that we just made. And in venv, we have a isolated version of whatever the default version of Python is on your computer. All right, so you can save this and probably use it as a staging area if you want to just sort of test some code or something like that. But I want to show you how to create a new Python project, and it is preferred that every time you start a new Python project, you create a virtual environment. And what this does is it isolates this project from any other projects that are running on your computer. All right, this allows you to run different versions of Python on your computer, and it also allows you to share your code base with others on something like GitHub and have them be able to download, install your code, and ensure that it will run on their machine. Okay, so typically what we would do is we'd come in here, we have a new idea, we're going to start something, and I'll just go to the File menu and I'll select New Project. Okay, so by default, it assumes that I'm going to do something in Python. It's going to, again, use my default, whatever's in my path for Python. All right, I currently have 314. And then it's going to sort of suggest a name for the project. All right, it's not very imaginative. And then this one, it looks like it's going to save it on the desktop. Typically, it will probably save it in PyCharm projects folder in your home directory. All right, and so if you want, we can sort of navigate somewhere. Right, I could save it in Documents, and then if I'm going to save it in Documents, right, I can make a new file and just call it Demo. All right, and if I don't want to use the default version of Python, if I click this drop down, you can see, it will download and install any version of Python within reason, right, going back to about 3.8 here. All right, so in order to have a project based on a specific version of Python, that version of Python has to be installed on your computer. All right, so I'll just select the 312 here so we can see that work. And then we also have some other mechanisms here to set up our new projects. All right, when I click that new script, it used this package, right, which comes with the standard library in Python. All right, and that does a reasonable job, right? It installs Python and the standard library and pip, and we can sort of move on from there. All right, I'm going to click on custom environment real quick so you can see what else we can do. All right, and instead of using the built-in standard library virtual env, we can also, if you have Anaconda installed, you could build a project based on Anaconda, and then you would have access to all of those libraries that are installed in Anaconda. This is probably a bit of an overkill, especially if you're planning on sharing your code out on GitHub or something, because one of the things that happens when you make a virtual environment is it instructs the other computer where you are downloading code what libraries are needed. All right, and there are hundreds of libraries in Anaconda, and it takes a tremendous amount of time to get up and going with that. But we have this option, pipenv, we have poetry, and then we have uv. All of these are going to need to be installed on your system in order to generate a virtual environment based on them. So if you're familiar with some of these, maybe you want to use one of those. I'm going to use uv because it is the fastest virtual environment creator there is. All right, and then I'm just going to click on UV from the interpreter type menu here. And if you do that, you're probably going to see a message over here that asks you to download and install UV. Okay, so you're going to want to go ahead and do that. And after I'm done with that, I'll just click Create. And yeah, we can see that happens very fast. It made, again, another one of those sample files for me to work with. It's about the same thing here. And then, yeah, you might get some messages that's talking about Defender, right, if you're using a Windows computer. So you can click Exclude there, and then you can click this Don't Show Again, even though it'll probably ignore that, okay? And by the way, if you have a problem installing UV, it's pretty easy to install manually and then go back and create a new project based on UV. If you open the terminal here, and it doesn't matter if you're a Mac or Windows, it's just going to be pip install UV. All right, obviously I don't need to do that because mine worked just fine. All right, but sometimes on the Macs there's a little bit of a hang up there with it installing UV for you automatically. All right, and then the file we get that we didn't have before is this one, pyproject.toml, which is just a markdown file. And if I open that, you can see what's in there. We have some specifications about the project. So if you're actually making a package and you're going to be sharing it with people, right, we can do something with versioning here. We can do something with a name for the project and a little bit of things that we're just not worried about in this tutorial. All right, but what you see here is that, it's using Python 3.14. All right, and if I want to change that, I can. I could say, okay, I need Python 3.12. Right, I'll leave it as is, and then anything that's specifically installed for this project would show up here under dependencies. All right, so right now you have a virtual environment. All it has is Python standard library. Okay, let's install a couple things so we can see UV in action, and then we can watch the TOML file update here. All right, so it's just going to be UV add, and I'll add a couple of pretty big packages here so we can see how quickly that works. All right, so just a couple of seconds, and if you've ever had to install either of those before, you know that happened very quickly. All right, once I have done that, it shows that, okay, so both of those packages installed, and then, okay, if somebody downloads it from GitHub and they want to set up the environment on their computer, they're just going to run uv sync. And uv sync is going to look for that TOML file, and it's going to install everything that it needs there. All right, the other option is there's a new file that's been added after I put these dependencies in there, uv.lock. And sometimes these two files are a little bit out of sync. uv.lock can also be used to set up the environment, and I just put the switch lock on there. So instead of using TOML, it'll use the lock file. All right, so a little bit more than we need to know for what we're doing here. Okay, so that's how we get started with a virtual environment. I'm going to close this. And then what I didn't mention earlier is what's an integrated development environment. It has a few common components. One of them is some kind of text editor that facilitates writing code in whatever language you're working with. And yeah, this one is specifically for Python, but if you're doing a full stack web development with Python, it will easily help you write HTML files, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so text editor facilitates writing code, and then it has some kind of debugging facility, and it looks like I put in a debug point over here, so I'm going to just sort of turn that off. But if you want to insert debugging, right, you just sort of click out here in the number lines, and it will add a spot where when the code runs, it sort of stops and looks at that line. Okay, so once we have our virtual environment, the other things I want to show you are some of the extensions we can add and a few shortcuts for keeping your hands on the keyboards rather than using the mouse. All right, so I'm either going to go to Settings or Preferences in the Mac, or I'm going to press the Shift key twice, and it opens a search so I can search for whatever I'm looking for, and I can just sort of type settings in here. All right, we can see there's a few different settings. We're going to want the one with the ellipsis. Okay, and that should be about the same in a Mac. I'm looking for plugins here, and I'm going to add a few plugins, and then we'll sort of talk about them. So there's something like, I don't know, 10,000 plugins for PyCharm. There's a lot anyway. And you're going to want to just install the ones that you want, because as soon as you sort of install too many plugins, you'll kind of slow down your development environment. Okay? All right, so I'll just install a couple. The first thing I'm going to do is install Atom material icons. Okay, and yeah, usually it asks you to restart. I'm going to install everything and then restart it once, and then we'll see what that does. I'm going to add some themes. Okay, so I mean, if I want to search for a theme, I can search for a theme, right? And I'm going to install this one, Material Theme UI, because it installs a couple dozen different themes, and you can probably find one that you like in there. And if you don't, you come back here to Plugins and you find the theme you want. All right, I'll hit Install, and then I will install something called Rainbow Brackets. It's a freemium product, but you don't need to buy the paid version here to do most of what we want Rainbow Brackets to do anyway. And then the last one I'm going to do is Key Promoter X. Okay, and so once that's done, I'll hit Apply, and then I'll go ahead and restart. Okay, so once you restarted, you'll just kind of notice that, oh, it opened the last project that I was working on. Yes, it will always do that, so you don't need to sort of navigate around to whatever you're currently working for. You just fire up PyCharm, and it picks up right where you left off. Those ones we can see right away, and that was the one add icon. And it just sort of adds some colored iconography over here that makes it easier to find these left-hand menu items, right? And then it also added some different for the file types. All right, so it's just purely visual, and it makes it easier to see different parts of the environment. We can resize this, right? So, and then you'll notice that when I brought that back, I got a message down here, and it's telling me that, oh, there's a keyboard shortcut for doing what you just did, collapsing the menu. Okay, so that's what Key Promoter X does. And then, right, I'll show it to you one more time. If I click on Run, it's going to tell me, oh, you should have clicked Shift F10 to run the file rather than what you did. Okay, so that was Key Promoter X. And then material themes, right? If I click on the little circle down here, we can see that, oh, I can change some aspects. Or if I click on the actual theme itself, we see that, oh, I can choose one of these other themes. Okay, so I'll just choose one so we can see that happen. And then slightly different, all right? And then, like I said, you can try as many of those as you like, get the one that you like, and work with that. Okay, I'm going to shift now, and we're going to eventually see what Rainbow Brackets does here. I'm going to replace all this code with some new code so we can see some of the code completion in action. All right, I didn't turn on any large language model tools here, so it's just kind of the native code completion that we have with PyCharm. Obviously, yes, I can integrate whatever I like. I can integrate Copilot, Codex, any of these, or yes, JetBrains has its own AI-enabled code completion. That one gives you like cursor, sort of a limited number of completions, and then it asks you to pay for it. Okay, so I'm just going to do something very simple here so we can see some of the keyboard shortcuts and then, yeah, rainbow brackets. Okay, so I'm going to import, right? And so code completion, I'm going to get math, and I'm just going to do something really simple. I'm going to calculate the area of a circle. And so you can see that, oh, it understands right away that, oh, I must want to get math.py for this constant pi. All right, and so pretty decent code completion with no large language model involved. Okay, I'm going to set a radius here, and I'll say it's 8. And I'm just going to put in a bunch of extra lines here, and I'm going to say area pi r squared. All right, so you can see that it automatically knows that I must want to multiply those two values together, and then, right, I'm going to square it. Okay, and once I'm done with that, I'm going to print something out. All right, and so it assumes I want to print area. That's fine. Eventually, I probably do want to print area, so I'll surround that in curly braces. I'll put it in an F string, and I'll say, the. All right, so something like that. All right, and that's good enough to show you what I want to show you. All right, so we can see that I've written this, and okay, I've made a couple of mistakes intentionally here, right? I have a variable called x, which is pretty unPythonic, right? It's supposed to be radius, so I could probably name that variable radius and be a bit more explicit about what I'm doing there. And I could go through and it's showing up. Oops, I should have put the value there instead of the variable. I could go through at each instance of x and update it to radius, but that's a little inefficient. Okay, so if I just start at the first instance, or any instance really of x, and I use Control-Shift-Alt-T, so kind of a bulky shortcut. So Control-Shift-Alt-T, and opens the refactor menu. And since I'm just doing renaming, I could have also just selected Shift F6. So I'm going to hit rename, and then what's the new name? I'll call it radius. Okay, so one step, all renamed. That's nice. I put in some extra lines here, right? So, I should probably clean this up. There's no real good reason to have all these extra lines. So again, to open the built-in linter, code linter, Control-Shift-Alt and L, and then you just tell it what you want to relint, and we should easily see that, oh yeah, it removed a few lines, and it told me it removed 3 lines. Okay, and then yeah, we're ready to run it. And so, yep, since key promoter X told me that I should use Shift F10. I used Shift F10, and we get our output. Even though I have a spelling error in there, we get our output in the terminal here. All right. So when you run this is equivalent to running it at the command line. And then if you want to interact with any of these components of your script, right, this is a very simple one, but oftentimes, right, we want to run something, we want to interact with it. I can also run it from the Python console. And to do that, I'm just going to right click here and then run in Python console. Okay, so a little different, right? I get the same output, obviously, and then, it's showing me it's keeping track of these variable values over here, 1 constant, 2 variables, and then, yeah, if I want to do something else with any of these, I can, since I have a Python prompt, I can just interact with it here. Okay, one last thing I'll show you is the to-do functionality. I'm going to say define shore circumference. That's fine. And maybe I don't remember how to do that right now, but you can see that, it notices, you're doing some calculations based on a circle, and it recognized right away that, probably they want to, if you calculated area, get the circumference, right? And I should probably functionalize getting the area as well, but this is fine for now. All right, normally if I say I don't remember how to do that, I can just put a pass there, and then to indicate that I'm going to go figure that out and come back and do it later, I'm going to, all in uppercase here, write to do. All right, and you can imagine a much larger code base where you have lots of functions that you're going to want to come back and write and work on. And to quickly find them in a larger code base, right, we can use to do. Okay, so that should be enough to get you started with PyCharm, and I hope that helps.